Hi, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a homebirth mum of 2 little boys. I'm a mental health nurse, a homebirth advocate broadly, but also more specifically in the state of Victoria, and I'm an ex-student midwife. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Welcome to episode 24, which is shared by first-time mum Alaura, a graphic designer who lives in Perth in Western Australia with her little boy Arius and her partner Trent, who shared his partner experience of home birth on the podcast too. Alaura explains that her birth experience has strongly influenced her amazing first postpartum, which before you even listen tells you that this is a beautiful story and I know you'll love it. Enjoy! Welcome, Alaura, to the Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So for the listeners listening to Alaura's story today, you might remember Alaura from Trent's episode, one of our partner, that part of the partner series that I've been doing for the podcast. So it's very cool to be able to hear the other side of the story. Alaura, do you want to give a little bit of an overview about who you are, where you live, who's in your family kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Alaura. I'm 31 years old. I live in Perth with my partner Trent and our little son Arius. He was born nearly 4 months ago. He's 4 months on Christmas Day, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
We also have our 2 little cats, Althea and Para, who are just as much our babies as Arius. So,
Yeah.
but that's us. I'm a graphic designer. I have my own small business that I run from home, like a design studio. Trent does his martial arts, which he talked about in his episode. He is also like in a management position at work, and then Arius is just chilling as a baby. So.
Baby life.
Yeah, baby life.
Yeah, nice. So I guess going back to whenever, do you remember the first time you ever heard about home birth?
So I'm like always been aware that it existed, but I feel like specifically more of a, how to say, not for our people, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
It's like a very sort of traditional thing that I'm trying to think of the right word, but like more cultural in different parts of the world, if that makes sense. So not so much like a Western thing, which I guess is actually applicable to the state of home birthing. And then as I was going through my journey to conceive, I was reading some books and the home birth thing kept popping up in the books. So I sort of deep dived into it after that, and that's when I really submerged myself into the idea.
Yeah, wow. And but I just think it's always so amazing talking to other first-time mums that chose home birth, because the odds are so stacked against you as a first-time mum. But that's really cool that you kind of saw the repetition of home birth in different resources. What's your perception of home birth accessibility in Perth?
So after I had figured out or learnt about the home birthing through the books and stuff that I was reading, I did sort of have a look at what the different options were in Perth for birthing, as we had a look at all the different options. So the public system, the private system, the birth centres. Then I was looking into the home birthing options and just what is accessible in Perth, because I was at this point where I was still thinking it would be good to, can you home birth at home with people there to help you, Yeah. And then so I learned about the private midwives, but then also what we have is the community midwifery program here, which is government funded midwives who will attend the birth for you. So that's what I ended up opting for. The program is quite limited in participation, though. Like, there's not a lot of positions available for like women. Like, the program's quite small, so like you have to apply and get approved, and the guidelines and everything are quite tight. So
and like do you know if, I guess it's not like really a question, like if you can have a home birth for free. Obviously there's pro cons with everything, but because otherwise having a private midwife is like upwards of $6,000 or so.
Yeah, so that's sort of why I opted for the community midwifery program, is that we just weren't in a position to financially afford a private midwife. And also by the time I was arranging all that sort of stuff, I was a bit like, I don't know if I have time to actually find somebody. So, which I now sort of realise, listening to other people's stories and my own experience, I'm like, I probably definitely had time to still find somebody, but I just wanted to be out of the system as quickly as possible.
You know,
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I asked Trent this, but I think his response was like, "Oh, you organised it." But like, how did you get into the program? Like, do you like get a referral from the GP and you like rock up to the hospital? Or like, how does it work in Perth?
No, so I think it was just in a forum, maybe like one of the mums forums or something, and they said like you have to apply on your own, like, will, you know, you just go to the website and download an application form. And like they were saying in the comments, you know, they're really busy, they get so many like applications, so you just have to like submit it as soon as possible. So I pretty much did it as soon as I knew I was pregnant. So I was like, I really want to get into this program. So I just downloaded the form, then emailed it off to them. I think they said that they wanted to just wait till I got to that 12-week point before they actually like put me into like an allocated date, like a confirmed like when the birth was going to be and stuff like that, and actually like secured my spot. But I got my application in like straight away, and so it was something that I had to organize myself. I did go to the GP to get like a pregnancy confirmation test done, just because I was scheduled to have like a fertility test, which is the one where they put like oil through your uterus and stuff. And they had said like if you have to do a pregnancy test like the day before or on the day, just to check that you're not pregnant. Obviously, if they go through with it and you are, that would terminate the pregnancy. So I had done the pregnancy test on the Sunday and I was scheduled on the Monday, and the test at home was positive. So then I went to the doctor to get like the actual blood test done just to confirm it, but cancelled the test, obviously, like the fertility testing, and was like, I'm actually pregnant. So and when I was at the doctor, he was like, do you want private or public health? And I was like, I'm gonna home birth. And that was the whole thing where he tried to talk me out of it.
Really? Oh my gosh, what did he say? Tell me.
He was like, he actually pulled the hip thing on me, like women's hips aren't the same anymore.
No.
What? And I was just sitting there like I'm not a super confrontational person, but like he was just going on, and I was like, just stop, like like I'm never coming back.
What?
And I told him like I was like, no, I've already like got my application for the like midwife program ready, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, you know, just he's like, just be careful, it's really dangerous. I'm like,
I'll take my chances, thanks.
Okay. Like I couldn't be any more of a textbook doctor like response, you know.
Oh my gosh, that's like rubbish, absolutely rubbish.
And then I found out like not too long after that his like wife was pregnant, and I was like, I feel for her, because I was seeing like he referred me to just see they had like a midwife working in the GP that I was going to. So she sort of initially like he referred me to her basically to finish the appointment, because he sort of just didn't want to, I suppose, have much more to say to me at that point. So yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. And so you were done with the GP and you got accepted into the program, and then like do you get like automatically I guess assigned a midwife, or like do you get any choice, or like how does that work?
So they did automatically assign a midwife just based on like location.
Yep.
So I think I heard someone explain this in another episode from Perth. We have like north of the river and south of the river.
Yep.
And I'm north of the river, so I had like a midwife she actually lives a suburb away from me, which was really handy.
Cool.
And so they assigned me to her, but it does say like if you're finding difficulties like not getting along with your midwife, you can opt to change and they'll like reassign a different midwife to you.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit not hesitant, but a bit nervous at first that I'd get in there and meet her and be like, oh no, she's like really systemized and you know, like very medical. I lucked out like after I think we were both sussing each other out in the first appointment just to see where each other was, and then after that we realized we were very much on the same page, and I was really happy with the midwife that I had. So
yeah, that's amazing. And so did you just see her throughout your pregnancy, or were you introduced to like a second midwife, like the backup midwife, or?
I only saw her. There was a second backup midwife, but the day that I was supposed to meet her, there was a bit of a mix-up with the appointment time, so I never actually met her until she came to the birth. Yeah, cool. And like throughout your pregnancy, did you decline any particular tests, or? I did. I declined the gestational diabetes test. Yeah. And I also declined the strep test.
Yeah. GBS. Yeah, cool. And did you like receive any like pushback from like any of those declining, or?
No, so the midwife I had, I ended up figuring out that we were very much on the same page with all that sort of stuff, because she was recommending like reading resources that I'd already accessed myself and things like that. Yeah. And when she was very much like, there's certain things you have to do to stay on the program. Yeah. It's like outlined by the government, but she was like, it's pretty BS. So. Yeah. And then even with those sort of things, she's like, look, I have to just like offer you and tell you about like the gestational diabetes test and things like that, but you don't have to take them. And like off the record, I wouldn't do it. You know?
Yeah.
So, and she had recommended the podcasts like Midwives Cauldron and Birth Rebellion and stuff, which I had been listening to already, and the episodes on those particular tests, and I'd just made it up in my mind. Like, I don't want to, you know, because if I did one and it was positive, then the consequence of that is like the home birth kind of gets.
Yeah, well, it's the label. It's not even like, you know, because there's a bit of a, like, that like gestational diabetes is the whole thing, but like there's obviously like a spectrum. If you get the diagnosis, there's obviously kind of like a spectrum of like where you sit on it, but like it can just be the label that like derails everything.
Yeah, like that's what I sort of learned was that like and people like different hospitals and everything have different what's the word?
Like cutoffs, like ranges?
Cutoffs? Yeah. So I was like, and I didn't have, like, there's no history in my family. I had no, like, red flags or anything like that. So I was like, I'm actually probably fine, like, healthy diet and all the things. So I was like, I feel like I'm fine. Yeah. I don't really want to, like, roll the dice on this. I've also, like, heard and read about how the actual test itself gives a lot of false positives. So I'm just not gonna, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's very cool that you were able to make those choices or decision, you know, informed choices, because Victoria is, well, they say 5, but really it's like 4 at the moment. We're going to have 4 publicly funded home birth programs in Victoria, more specifically, like I guess like Melbourne and the regions like directly outside of Melbourne. But I've been looking at the criteria and it very much seems like if you decline, you're off the program. And that's just like, it's so risky. Like, imagine being kicked out of a program at like 30 something weeks. Like that would suck.
Yeah, absolutely. And the experience of that sort of time being on the program, you are sort of waiting for something to crop up that's just going to like kick you off, you know?
Yeah.
So you kind of have it in the back of your mind. But I've like, with the midwife that I had, I felt that, and knowing my own health and history and things like that, I was quite confident that I was going to be okay. And I honestly had a pretty much textbook perfect pregnancy. So
cool.
So it was fine.
Yeah. So you said that you'd been listening to podcasts and you'd already been doing like a lot of your own education. Did you guys like attend any like formal kind of education kind of stuff, or?
So we did a hypnobirthing course. That would have been around, I think we started that when I was about 30 weeks. So it was quite late. And then I also did like an online breastfeeding course just because it was quite important that I wanted to educate myself on breastfeeding to have the best possible chance of successfully doing it, because all my friends that had babies had all either not even tried or just had horror stories about endlessly bleeding nipples and things. So I was like, okay, like I really want to be able to breastfeed, so I'm just going to find some sort of information to try and help me. And it was really good. Like it explained, go through all the things that they just didn't do in the other hospital sort of like courses and stuff about like the effects of epidurals and things like that on baby and how it affects latching and all those sorts of things and the golden hours and that. Like, just having that that information behind me really helped, I think, with the breastfeeding journey,
Yeah, that's like so incredible. I would say you are amongst a very small number of especially first-time mums that like engaged in a breastfeeding course like that, because I guess similar to birth, well, I don't know if it is similar because there is like a lot of fear about birth, but birth is like a physiological thing, breastfeeding is a physiological thing, but I think like for a lot of women, like the whole breastfeeding thing, like when it actually baby's born and latch and everything, you sometimes don't realize that like, I've got to actually learn this skill. And baby has to learn this skill as well. And it's like, trying to perfect this dance. Like it's not just like latch on and go for your life all the time, it's.
Which is sort of what you are in a way led to believe. And then if they don't just latch on and go for their life like straight away, then it's not going to work. But that seems to be the narratives behind it. But I just, the same thing with the birth stuff. Like once I went through and learned a lot about the birth stuff and how like the hospital system has such an effect on it. And then I sort of just put it together in my head that I was like, no, the breastfeeding obviously is like the same sort of situation. And all the stuff that happens in the hospital with the interventions and things has impact on the breastfeeding. So I figured that, if I want to do this the proper way that I want to do it, then I need to be educated on both of them. And I knew how good the breast milk is for the baby, and not only for baby, but for me as well as the mother. I was like, well, I want the best shot I can at that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I want to give it the best try that I can. And a bit of a like A-type person. I do all the research and like just have it all. And honestly, like even through the actual birth, I feel like the information that I had gotten from myself played like a pivotal role in helping me through the actual birthing process. If that makes sense.
When you're telling your friends and your family and stuff that you like have chosen to home birth, like did they have a particular response, or like were they like really on board? Or
so most people were a bit I don't want to say like extremely off-putting, but like a lot of people were concerned and like, are you sure it's going to be dangerous? Like it's, you know, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which I mostly didn't want to get into like big conversations with people because it's just not worth the time. No. But I was like, we live 5 minutes from a hospital.
Yeah.
Like if something goes wrong, like we're really close, you know? And, you know, there was still some ongoing conversations if it ever came up with certain family members and things. And it's just like, just stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And then for myself, because I'm, like I work from home and that, so I don't have as many interactions with people outside as like Trent did. He had a lot of people at work and things like that were very much like, it's really dangerous. Like, just be careful. Like there are these quote unquote horror stories that ended up just not being that horrific. It was like someone had a home birth and the power cut out. And that was like the punchline. I was like, what? Like that was the disastrous thing that happened, was that the power went out and we were like, oh, that was a bit underwhelming. Like sort of we're waiting for the so like we'll be fine if the power goes out.
Oh my gosh.
And then like on Instagram and things like that, I had people sort of message me when I was sharing about it online, being like, don't do it, it's really dangerous. I'm like, I'm just not even gonna reply.
Yeah, it just falls on deaf ears like so much. But I'm so like happy that you like, you know, didn't let that deter you. And
no, I was very determined.
So what, like you work from home, did you kind of like put that aside at some point and just try and...
I did. I worked up until the month that he was born. I had it in my head in a way that he was going to be early, only in the sense that for a while I had been just automatically / accidentally telling people like the wrong time frame. Like it had been like the same sort of time frame. So it was like subconsciously I had this date that he was going to be born, which wasn't his quote unquote due date.
Yeah.
That I had been telling people, and I realized I was saying it, and it was like a few weeks before the due date. So I was like, I have to be finished like my work by the time we get to that date, because maybe that's when he's going to be born.
Yeah.
And then I was confident that he might be born early because, you know, first time babies, they're never born on time, but he actually came like bang on his due date.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you finished work. Did you do like any particular like preparation in those last few weeks?
I really just tried to relax as much as I could and just enjoy the time leading up to it, you know, and just like this free time that I had. I was trying to exercise a bit because I know that is like good for the pregnancy, and in like the labor, I was going for lots of walks, but I had like sciatica in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And he had dropped almost like fully engaged at about 30 weeks.
Yeah.
So he was very low. So I was having a hard time getting around.
Yeah.
I did start swimming, which was something my midwife recommended.
Yeah.
So I was just going to the pool, walking as much as I could, and then just really taking it easy after that. And I was also seeing a chiropractor for the sciatica, and I had been doing traditional Chinese medicine for most of the pregnancy and for about a year, like going through the conception stage and everything. So I was just doing those appointments, the walking, relaxing, and just getting ready and reading my books and things. So
yeah, nice. And did you, you know, often I ask about like what we're going to do with the other children, but you don't have any other children except for your cats. What did you have any like thoughts about like how like your cats might react like to
I hadn't thought about how they would react, which they actually reacted significantly more than I expected them to. But I just had planned to have them at home. Like we have, they're indoor cats, and we have like our backyard is netted in, so they can go outside, but they can't get out
Yeah.
of the yard.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, they can just do whatever they want and be wherever they want to be. Like,
Yeah. If only you could do that with like a toddler.
Yeah. So I'm saying that I think if we have another baby, that I would do basically the exact same thing, and I would be quite happy for them to be there as well. And I've seen a lot of birth videos and things with kids. So
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
We actually had one of our best friends, like, daughters.
Yeah, actually.
Birth.
Yeah. I think in the photos that you shared with me earlier, I think maybe she's in one of those pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, because you also had a doula.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So, when did you meet up with your doula? Like, how did you figure out, or at what point did you decide, oh, maybe I also want a doula?
Yeah, so I knew even before I was pregnant that I was going to have a doula because of the books and things that I had been reading. Like, doula was like a key word in those sort of books, and I had already sort of established in my mind how important it was going to be for me to have a support person like that.
Yeah,
as I don't have like family nearby or anything, and I sort of felt like having that circle of women to be there and support you was not something that I just naturally had, so I sort of wanted to source it myself. And I had seen the lady that I had as my doula for a womb massage,
cool.
which I had done like as I was trying to fall pregnant, as I was going through like a endometriosis diagnosis and things like that. So I was just trying to I was on my healing journey, and I was getting more into like the spirituality side of things. So I had the womb massage with her and found out that she was a doula as well, and we had already had that connection with the womb massage, and we just vibed really well. So I was like, I'm not even going to look at anybody else. Like, you've already done like this first step for me, this healing massage. I feel like you're already a part of the journey. So then when the time came, I just messaged her, and we were already in contact because we had stayed in touch after that. And so she was almost like a first point of contact where I was like, guess what? I'm finally pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, yay.
Oh, that's very special. That's like the ultimate continuity of care.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that like I hadn't put it together until after like Arius was actually born, but in conversation I'd heard her saying the name Alaura, and I kept thinking like, what is she talking about me for? But it turned out her daughter was named Alaura as well, and I just thought that was really
like spelt the same way.
I don't think it's spelt the same way, but I thought, well, that's a trip. Like, I had no idea.
meant to be. That's very cool. And I remember when Trent was explaining that, because it's his best mate's daughter, is that correct? Or like you guys is one of your best mates. And so like that is so special. Like, what a gift you have given to her. But like, at what point did you, like, is she like interested in birth, or like how did that come up?
Yeah, so she had said to me, like, every now and then I've taken her, like, for dinner or to the movies or something, and just hung out with her. And in our conversations, she's said on a few occasions that she was quite interested in being a midwife. So when I was pregnant, I was sort of talking to Trent. I was like, I'd really like for her, if she's is very interested in becoming a midwife, to get like her first interaction with birth to be like a home birth, so that she's going to probably go through like the education system, getting the really like, hospitalized version of birth. But if she sees this as like her first interaction and experience with birth, then hopefully that just leaves like that imprint on her and like changes her career. If that's what she pursues.
Absolutely.
She is 16, so she's still got like time to sort of.
Maybe she'll go tell all her friends. And then it'll be like a revolution.
Well, that's sort of what I was like. Learning about this whole birth revolution thing, I was like, that's potentially like something that I can do to have a bit of an impact on someone. And speaking to her afterwards, she was just like yeah, like so happy with the experience. And she said like she's going to home birth when she has babies.
Wow.
And just like, yeah, she was really, and she was so good as well because I wasn't sure. She's still quite young. So I was a bit like if she gets overwhelmed, her dad can come pick her up and stuff. But she was like amazing the whole time, very like mature for her age as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That is so cool. And, you know, in those last couple of weeks, did you have any signs of labour?
So I was having Braxton Hicks, but I didn't know it until I went to the chiropractor for like my 3rd or 4th appointment, and she was doing the treatment, and she's like, I'll just wait for this like contraction thing to pass. Like, what are you talking about?
yeah.
She's like, oh, you're having like Braxton Hicks. I was like, I don't even know. Like I haven't, like I can't feel it. She's like, yeah, your stomach's like hard like a rock. That's like a Braxton Hicks. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I had no idea. So apparently I had been having Braxton Hicks. I didn't know what they felt like, and I hadn't noticed it. And then leading up to the birth, there would have been probably within a couple of days beforehand that I was having very mild menstrual sort of style cramping every now and then. And I was like, oh no, that just happens, you know, like that doesn't mean it's going to happen anytime soon. It could still be a week or two, you know. So, but yeah, no, it turned out that was definitely like the lead into the birth. So.
Yeah, wow. Do you want to tell the story of the birth of Arius then?
Yeah, sure. That's what we're here for. Don't know how to start it, but so it was the Thursday, which was the 24th of August.
Yep.
And I was going for a Chinese medicine appointment in the morning. I'd been going like weekly for the past couple of weeks now that it was like leading up to the actual like time that he was going to be born, as they tailor sort of the treatment that they're doing based on what area of the pregnancy you're in. So we had been switching it up, and now it was like honing down on preparing the body for like laboring and things. So I had gone in for the Chinese medicine. I remember driving there, I was starting to feel those light cramps again. Yep. And Trent had taken the day off work so that he could come with me. And I'd also had the light cramping like the day before that. And he was like, you're going into labor. And I was like, no, like it's too early. It's like right near his due date. I was just like blowing it off, you know. Yeah. The cramps are supposed to happen. It's just the body getting ready. But he was like convinced that it was happening. Yeah. The other thing was that I had a chiropractic appointment the day before, and then I had another one with her on the Friday, which was the due date. And she was like, I don't think I'll see you on Friday. So like, good luck with the birth.
Wow.
Like, oh, okay. And I had told Trent that, and he was like, yep, this is it. I was like, okay. Yeah. And I remember sitting in the Chinese medicine appointment, like with the like cups and stuff on my back, just like feeling these light cramps, being like, oh, I wonder if this is it, you know? Yeah. But like the hypnobirthing people had also said the best thing to do is just pretend like it's not happening and just be in denial. Yeah. And I think I was like honing in on that much more than like I was expecting I would be. And I can remember we went and just had like a coffee and some lunch, and then we were driving home, and on the drive home Trent was like, oh, you should just start timing these cramps just so we can see like the pattern. Yeah. And I was a bit reluctant to do it, but I did. And then they had fizzled out like they did the day before, and I was like, oh no, that's just what, you know, it's just those really, really early stage crampings. Yeah. Then I went about my day. I actually can't remember what I did that day, but then I remember it was in the evening, probably it was around dinner time, and Trent was making dinner for me, and the cramps had started again, and I was like, oh, this is a bit different to yesterday, you know, like they fizzled out and that was it for the day. Yeah. And then I had remembered the doula told me that a lot of people go into labour in the evening and in the night. So I was like, okay, we'll see what's happening. So we started timing the contractions again, and the app that I was using, it like after you time a few contractions, it sort of says like, oh, maybe pack your bag and be ready to go to hospital.
Oh, yeah. I remember that happening to me as well. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then after a little while, like it was like, you should go to the hospital. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is like actually probably progressing. But in my head, I was still a bit like, oh, no, it's not it. You know, I don't know why I kept saying that, but I was like, no, just don't worry about it. Trent's like, can you call the doula? Should we call the midwife? I was like, no, it's going to be fine. Like, we'll just relax. And also the midwife had said to me, you know, because part of their program thing is that I think it's an 18-hour window. If you're like laboring for longer than 18 hours at home and nothing's happening, then you'd be transferred to the hospital.
Okay.
So the midwife had said to me, she was like, call me when you need me, but try not to call me too early. You know? Because like once I come, like you're going to be on the clock, and that's unfortunate. Like she thinks it's BS as well, but it's just what it is, you know. That's what the container she works within. So I was like, don't call the midwife, we'll talk to the doula and see what she says. So I would have messaged her at about 8 p.m. and just let her know what was happening. And she lived about an hour away, so she was like, just bear in mind, like it is going to take me an hour to get there, so if you think things are actually happening, do let me know, because it'll be a bit of a drive. And I like sent her screenshots of the app and with the contractions and told her like Trent is convinced that I'm in labor. And she was like, I think he's right. But I can just come over and just hang out with you guys and we'll just see what happens. Like I'll just sleep on the couch or something. If it fizzles out, I'll just go home, you know? So it was really nice of her to make the drive. Like, I wasn't convinced that it was labour, but she was like, I agree with Trent. And Trent was like, can she come and just hang out with us? Like he wanted her to be there. And I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. So she did drive up. She would have got to our house at about 10 p.m. And I feel like I hadn't noticed anything had gotten any more intense at that point. We were just watching like some funny shows on the TV just for like a bit of a distraction. And also I like in the hypnobirthing, they had said that even like being overly excited can be a slight hindrance to like the birthing process as well. So I was trying to just keep it cool. I remember Trent was like dancing a little bit because he was really excited. And so the doula arrived and we were just sort of having a talk and she was just checking in with how I was feeling. And I was like, oh, like I'm fine, you know, like I've got these cramps, but they're not really that big of a deal. She sort of suggested that we do try to get some sleep. So she was just sleeping on the couch and we just went into the bedroom and I laid down for probably about 10, 15 minutes. And in that little like window of time, everything just like started to ramp up quite a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like there's a definite like shift here. The cramping started to get a lot more intense. So I had just nudged Trent. I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to sleep through this. Went and sat back with the doula in the lounge room and just put like some music and stuff on and we were just talking. She gave me the TENS machine and she like set it all up for me and told me how to use it. Like it's like on this low frequency and then there's a button you push that just like shoots it straight up to like the highest power. And just progressively over probably maybe like an hour, I just noticed like my breathing was starting to get like heavier and deeper, and then I was like pushing the button on the TENS machine more, and then eventually I was starting to like stop halfway through my sentences. And that's when I started to realize, oh, like I'm starting to not be able to like focus on conversation and keep talking through it. And then things were really quite progressing, and the next thing I knew I was like on the floor on my hands and knees. And at that point it was like fading in and out of not full consciousness, but definitely not being like fully aware of what was happening around me. And this is where like I can't remember the full experience at all. Like I only remember like highlights and chunks and snippets sort of things. So
absolutely.
I can remember like being on the floor and leaning against the lounge, and I don't know exactly why, but my legs were just just shaking and trembling so much that I just couldn't stand. Like the shaking was so intense as I was going through the contractions and things. And I remember seeing our friend's daughter arrive, and she came and sat with me, and she was like rubbing my back, and Trent was helping just rub my head or my hair and stuff like that, just helping me get through the contractions. And then they had filled the pool up for us because we had the birth pool. And I had started asking about if I could get into the pool. The midwife had arrived at that point. I don't remember Trent calling, but obviously he did. And didn't put her on the phone to me as they usually do, because I probably wouldn't have been able to say anything to her anyway. And I did get into the pool. So I was labouring in the pool for a little while, and it felt so good. It was just so nice to be in the water. I really loved it. But then the midwife asked me to hop out because all of my contractions had just really slowed down to just about nothing. Like it had all gone away, and she was like, "You're way too relaxed in the water. You're gonna have to hop out to get things moving again." So I very begrudgingly got out of the water because I wasn't my legs were so shaky and it was just uncomfortable to have to climb out of the pool. But I trusted her that she was advising me to do what was best for the birth. I had that faith in her. So I listened and I got out of the water, and I remember we went into the bedroom after that, and Trent just was with me in the bedroom. No one else came in, and it was just try and just spend some time together, just relax, maybe have a bit of a lay down. And we did some swaying and rocking and things like that, just to try and to pick the contractions and things back up again. And then I don't know how long we were in there for, but the midwife came in, and she offered to do a cervical exam at that point. Which this was the first time she had offered it to me, and I was like, yeah, okay, I wouldn't mind just knowing what was happening, sort of thing. And it was probably the worst part of the whole labour was having that exam. It was so unpleasant. She did it, and I don't think she got even the whole way into it, and I was immediately please stop, and she did, and it was just so painful, and I hated it. But she did say that I was 4 centimetres dilated. I can remember laying on the bed, and I could see the sun starting to come through the curtains. And being oh, it's been the whole night, and I was just in that moment started to get a little bit of that, I think that confidence crisis, you know? I was like, dear. And I remember just sitting on the end of the bed at that point, and then I started vomiting so much. I was really, really sick. And while I was vomiting, I was having contractions, and that was the moment where I sat there and I was like, geez, I don't, it's only 4 centimetres. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this. It's been all night. It's already been all night. And but then it was that information that I had given myself in preparation was you can go from 4 to 10 centimeters in an hour, or this is potentially transition. You're going to meet this wall, So in that moment, I had that voice in my head that was this is really intense. I hadn't eaten or drunk anything in hours, and I was losing my energy. That's why they wanted me to try and have a sleep. But being able to tell myself, recognize those parts of the progress and tell myself this is what's supposed to happen was enough for me to sort of be to talk myself back out of it. And then they suggested that I lay down just to try and have a sleep if I could between the contractions. And I laid down, and that would have been almost as equally as painful as the exam.
Absolutely.
Laying down was just terrible. I just couldn't do it. So just ended up coming back out of the bedroom and ended up back on the floor in the lounge room on my hands and knees with the shaking still going on crazy. And then the midwife suggested that I go labour on the toilet for a little while.
Yeah.
And she asked that while I was on the way to the toilet that I do these really high, like, steps.
Yeah.
Where you bring your knees up to your chest, like, as you're walking.
Yeah, okay, like soldier marching kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, this is just a manoeuvre to try and help baby, like, shuffle down, you know?
Yeah.
It was very unpleasant to do, but again, I trusted that she was just trying to help progress things as much as she could without being too interfering, you know?
Yeah.
So I did these giant steps to the toilet, and then I was on the toilet labouring for a while and had the TENS machine back on. I can remember they were trying to feed me just like a little bit of banana and honey and stuff, and I was just like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And then after labouring on the toilet for a little while, I was back in the lounge room, and then I started asking about the pool again because I wanted to get back into the water, and they had topped up the warmth of the pool before I got in.
Excellent.
Then I started to just continue labouring in the water, which was really relaxing, and I have no concept of the actual time that I was in there.
It's just like a blur.
Yeah. At one point, feeling things in my body like change.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, that was interesting, you know, like I don't know what's happening, but something's definitely different.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been when he, I suppose, like the dilating might have finished and he was getting ready to actually start like coming out. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
So
if that's what it is, like, I mean, we'll never know, but like that's like that connection to your body, that's like so incredible.
Yeah. I've always sort of had a very good connection to body. So yeah, I feel like I could pinpoint certain things happening.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, there was another shift, and it was my body was starting to push. Like I could feel my body was pushing, and I had really wanted to experience like the fetal ejection. So I was trying as hard as I could to just let my body do it itself. I was also having this really overwhelming urge to push alongside the body pushing.
Yeah.
So the contractions had shifted into these like more pushing contractions, and I could just feel that my body was tensing to push.
Yeah.
And then I was sort of making a conscious decision to like put my energy into the push at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did that for a little while, and I didn't have any coaching other than a couple of times the midwife just suggested to maybe like do a squat in a certain position, or you know, just to sort of help like feel better. And if I didn't do it, she didn't pressure me. She was just like very gently encouraging certain movements and things. But I was also very much intuitively just moving a lot in the pool, like swaying and things like that. I was having, as part of the program, they do have to do the heart rate checks.
Oh, the Dopplers,
but like I saw in some of the birth video afterwards that she was doing it, but I actually don't remember her even doing it in the time. But Trent had said to me, like, she was very respectful. Like, she was actually asking before she did anything like that. And if I said no, she just, like, walked away and came back later, you know, and she didn't come if I was having a contraction. So that was really good. Yeah. And then, so I was having this, like, these pushing sensations. I was pushing. And I actually found that part way less intense than the contractions and the actual, like, labour. I'm still in the water. I started to feel like the expanding, you know, and they were showing me in the mirror, and it looked a bit different to like what I'd seen in videos and stuff. And I was like, oh, looks different. And I was just curious what was happening, and it turned out that he was still in his like sack.
Oh, what? Just pausing there to add in something pretty special that Alaura only recently discovered through a debrief, and that is that Arius was actually born with a nuchal arm, which means his head was actually birthed with his hand by his face.
Yeah, so he was still, like, my waters hadn't broken yet.
Yeah,
so,
of course, yeah.
Like, the sac was coming out first.
Wow. So it was like a bit of like a water bubble kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so so the sac was coming out first, and they were saying that was quite good because it helps with the stretching before the head comes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And also the fact that he was still in the sac was good it was like lubricant for him, like coming down the birth passage.
Yeah.
So it was like a gentler birth. And once his head was starting to come out is when the waters broke. So we heard like this pop sound, which was like interesting to hear, especially because underwater. But there was a popping sound.
Yeah.
And then like the waters had broken. His head started to come out.
Yeah.
The only time the midwife had said anything to me was there was quite an extended period of time where his little head was just kind of like halfway out. And she said that I needed to give it a bit of a push because the constriction of like the like vagina around his head at that point would be quite tight and like an elastic band, and that it could cause like stress. So and that was something I had actually read. So I was like, yeah, that's fair. And I gave it a bit of a heave ho and and got him past that little point because she's like, I don't want him to get stressed and for things to progress in a less desirable direction. So let's just do that. Yeah. Once his little head was out, he did the little turn, which was a really crazy thing to feel. Yeah. It was very interesting. Yeah. And then,
what did you what was going through your head when that was happening? Because like it happened to me with Frankie as well, and I was just like, what the heck is that?
No, very much the same. Like the midwife was sort of guiding me through, and she's like, he's gonna start turning. Yeah. And I could feel it, and I was like, well, that's really weird. Yeah, that's so weird. Like it's really weird. Like they talked about that in the hypnobirthing, but I had forgot about it, and then it was happening, and I was like, wow, this feels really weird. Like it's a really strange sensation. Yeah. And then like the little face comes back up, and it's just like it's really surreal. And I can remember looking at him under the water, and then like his shoulders shot out, and he was sort of halfway in and out, and he sort of sat there for a little bit waiting for another contraction to do the last bit of it. And I had my arms or my hands around his arms, just holding him, and I remember looking down at him just being like, whoa, this is crazy. And then he came out, and I picked him up and I brought him up, and he was like crying straight away, and he was bright red, and so we knew he was absolutely fine at that point. And then Trent was crying, and then everyone else was crying. And I was just still like half off the planet. And not quite there, but I was happy, and looking at everyone was crying. Why is everyone crying? I'm not crying.
It was like such a good part of like the whole video that you shared with me was so cool because like I saw that, you know, Arius's body was like still like it wasn't like that like slide on out. It was just like slide and then a little bit longer, and then the rest came, and then like Trent was like overwhelmed with like happy tears and just like I felt like you also were just like, wow, like whoa.
I think that's I was definitely like wow, and but in a different way. Like, just that in that moment when you realize you did it, and you're just like, wow, exactly. Phenomenal. Like this is something I've read about, and like,
and now it's happening to me too.
I did it.
No, I did it. Now people can like read about me and listen to me. And I suppose like you, especially as like a first timer, you always will have like just a tiny smither of you that is a little bit like, what if I can't do it? And you have to have the like strength to like push that down as much as you can, but to finally have done it and been like, wow, you know? And then I suppose like all the hormones and everything that are flowing, it's just like I feel like my emotions at that moment were a little bit different to the whole room. The energy in the room was just like buzzing. And did you stay in the pool for long?
Yeah, so I think it would have been maybe about half an hour. Like I had put in like my birth plan that I had given the midwife was just like, I don't want to be like rushed out of things, you know, I just want to do what I want to do. And she was very respectful of that. And they just wanted to put a towel on Arius just to help keep him warm.
Yeah.
And then we just sat in the pool for a little while, waited for the placenta to be born. I started to have like little cramps and stuff again. And, you know, after the 20-ish hours of labour, I was like, I don't really want to feel this again.
Yeah, not again.
Yeah, not again, but it wasn't anywhere near as like intense as the actual contractions and didn't last very long. Yeah. It sort of stopped, but the placenta hadn't come out yet. And the midwife was like, maybe just stand up for a second. And I stood up and then just everything fell out of me. Yeah. It was quite gory in a way. Like the water was quite clear in the pool. Like there wasn't a lot of blood and mess from the birth. And like Arius came out very clean. Yeah. But then in just like a second the pool was red. Yeah. And there was just this everything just fell out. And I can remember in that second, like the back pain from the sciatica just like disappeared. Wow. And I felt being like 10 kilos lighter like straight away. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was pretty much. Like if you include like the baby and the amniotic fluid and the placenta, like that's a lot. Like
just this weight dropped out. Yeah. And it was like in that moment as well that I was like, the pregnancy is like over. Do you know what I mean? Like it was sort of like symbolic of like the ending.
Yeah. And I think the birth of the placenta, I've said it so many times before, like it is like such an important part that is often forgotten, but it really is like that whole like it is part of the whole I want to say like process or experience, but like that placenta is like what kept your baby alive, what helped your baby grow. And like after it's been born, like that's it. Like it's done its job. Like farewell, thank you placenta. Like that's the whole thing.
It was like something that I hadn't even thought about, but just in that moment I was like, wow, like I can really feel that like closure of the whole experience. And another thing I forgot to say about, like before the placenta had come out and it was still connected, my doula had suggested that I could feel the cord, and I felt the cord and I could feel it pulsating, and that was really amazing. Like so we did like the delayed cord cutting until it had gone white, which was quite quick really. And then Trent cut the cord, and I hopped out of the pool and they had put blankets and everything down on my couch so that I could just sit on the couch straight over Arius, and I just had him on my chest, letting him start like his crawl to the breast. And Trent cut the cord, and like the doula, she just like immediately kind of started emptying the pool, and she tipped like the water on the lawn and over some of our plants, which were looking a little rough, but they started to bloom like the next day, which was amazing.
I was going to say, so like nutrients, like blood, like they put that on gardens, like what's that called? It like smells horrible. Like, but is it called blood and bone or something? Yeah.
So we put it on some trees that had lost all their leaves, and like in a couple of days they all had leaves again, and we were like, oh,
there beautiful. There you go. You should have sold it. You could have sold it by the litre.
And they did show me the placenta, like I did want to have a look, but it was a bit, it didn't come out in like a whole piece. It was a bit like a couple of pieces sort of thing. And we did do like a stamp of the placenta on paper as best as we could to create that beautiful like placental art. And then we wrapped it in a mixing bowl and Glad wrap and just put it in the fridge till we decided what we were going to do with it. We ended up burying it in the backyard under a tree. And then so like the doula, she cleaned up, the midwives helped clean up. I had my like little thing where they just check for tearing, and I had no tearing or anything. So it was all pretty good. I did have like some lightheadedness and things like lightheaded, and wasn't able to really like stand up and walk around for a little while, which they had attributed to just not having eaten anything for like 24 hours. And
it'd be like running a marathon without like taking any water or any like energy gels or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they just were like, get as much food into you as quickly as you can. And I did, and then I felt better. And and that was, we ordered pizza for dinner and just sat around eating pizza. And it was pretty crazy after that.
Yeah, wow. And so Arius is almost 4 months, you said, on Christmas Day, yeah? Yeah. And like, I guess compared to maybe stories you've heard and things like that, but just like, how would you speak about, you know, this past 4 months and like your experience, it's your first baby. It's like, you know, initiation into motherhood, parenthood. Like, do you have any like words to like summarize that experience?
Yeah. So I feel like the work that I put into trying to set myself up for the best possible like postpartum period paid off.
Yeah.
Like all of my friends and family who have had babies recently went through really hard postpartum. Like everyone had the sort of same story of emergency cesarean and then couldn't breastfeed and had postnatal depression or anxiety or something. And I just was like, this isn't right. You know, I really want to make sure that I can avoid that as much as I can for myself. So that's why I did the things that I did, and I think that it really paid off, because I have found, the past 4 months to be pretty much a breeze. So, I haven't had really any emotional issues. We've been like co-sleeping, so we sleep really well. We're not tired in the day. The only thing I could say is that Arius hates driving in the car, which is not what I expected. Because everyone's like, babies love the car. I'm like, he hates it.
If I got a faulty baby.
So other than that, like, no, the postpartum part has been just like amazing for me. And I feel like based on everything that I learnt and read is that I like could attribute a lot of that to just going through the birth process naturally and not being affected by drugs and missing hormones that weren't, my body didn't get the opportunity to release. And also just like having educated myself, like I said, on breastfeeding and knowing that it takes a while even for your milk to come in properly, and just give it some time. And as you said earlier, like it's a natural thing, but it doesn't come naturally.
That's a great way to put it.
We spend a lot of time figuring out exactly how to make it work, you know? So, but I feel like if you didn't know that and you weren't breastfeeding within a couple of hours of birth, then you would just be like, well, I have to give him a bottle. So
but it's like totally another part of like the whole thing that you just, I guess maybe it's like a lesson for motherhood as well. You just need to trust yourself and trust your body. And
exactly.
I see like a lot of on social media, like posts from mums about supply and stuff, and they're like, oh, I pumped, but like it was only this much. But like babies are so clever. Like they're like your breasts and your baby are like completely designed to breastfeed. Like they're so much more efficient than something that, you know, was only invented, I don't know, whenever breast pumps were invented.
And I believe as well, based like again, like the things that I've read and that there's so much push to sort of separate mum and baby. And breastfeeding is beneficial even for the mental health, like after the birth, you know, it helps like with hormones and things that support you. So, and I just see a lot of that missing in so many of my friends and family stories. And like I had friends who just had planned cesareans and because they just didn't even trust that their body could birth, you know, and I thought that was really sad, and
it is
that they didn't have that trust in their body. And then the mainstream like narrative doesn't support
the
opposite either. It just encourages it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, like the books and everything I'd read, I was like, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Trent before he was born, like, I wonder if everything that I've like read is true and like, or if it's just a bit of fluff, you know. But having been through it, I'm like, no, that is like, I can't fault anything that I've read about natural birth, you know, and it not being better for you and everything. So yeah,
because until like actually happens, it's kind of it's just words on paper. You don't really have anything you know, to solidify that, but like this experience, like we'll all carry it within ourselves somehow, like forever, for the rest of your life. Even, you know, if you're 80 years old and may forget, you know, the actual labor and stuff like that, the impact that it's had on you know, this postpartum period and like your bonding and like just how you see your body, like that doesn't get lost. Absolutely not. So
and the whole experience is, you come out of that, like I came out of it feeling like a completely different woman, you know, and just like the old me died and it's,
you were reborn.
You can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but you're just not the same. You're not the same anymore.
I agree.
For the better.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing your first time mum home birth, a beautiful home birth. I'm so excited to also share some of the pictures on Instagram. Absolutely. So make sure if you're listening to this episode with Alaura that you check out the Instagram as well, because I've seen some of the pictures and they're incredible. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.